Tonight's question of the series, the 70 most difficult questions, is why doesn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu make himself known? Why doesn't he reveal himself? Why aren't there more open miracles? And in this way everybody will be convinced. Anybody that had any doubts will see for himself. Why are things so hidden? B'ezrat Hashem, the lecture after the holiday will be a similar question. It's really a continuation from this question, is what is exactly Hashem's hashgacha in this world? Hashem's supervision in this world. What does supervision mean? I'm going to give you a brief introduction about this topic of miracles and supervision. Judaism believes that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. That is not only a belief, it is obvious to us. We are told to know this as a fact, not just to believe blindly. We have to convince ourselves, we have to be 100% certain of it. And it's very easy to convince oneself if one has an open mind. You don't have to be Jewish for that. But that is one of the tenets of our faith, that we are confident of this, we have no doubts about it, it is clear to us, that's black and white, that Hashem created the world. But what is not so clear to everybody, including to some Jews unfortunately, is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, after he created the world, is he still around? Our faith, one of the principles of our faith, is that he not only is around, he continues to supervise the world. Hu mashgiach. He's aware of everyone's actions, he sees what everybody does, and he controls the situation. Does he always get involved? Not necessarily. What exactly does he do? That is the topic of Hashgachat Hashem. B'ezrat Hashem, after the holidays we'll be talking about what exactly Hashgacha means. How does Hashem get involved? One form of involvement is a miracle. That's just one form of involvement. That is what we'll be talking about tonight. Is if a miracle is Hashem's involvement, why aren't there more miracles? Why aren't the miracles more obvious? Because if he does exist, if he does run the show, then it would help for everybody to know this. Or would it? So that is the question of tonight. Why doesn't Hashem make it more obvious? You know, there are those who claim that if it were to be obvious, then they would believe that there is a God. If they can see the splitting of the Red Sea, not in Universal Studios, right, not on TV, if they can really see the Pacific Ocean split, then they would accept upon themselves the yoke of heaven, they would commit themselves to do mitzvot, they would be observant, right, religious. There are people who claim that. Are they saying the truth or not? Who knows? Maybe yes. Maybe some of them would, if they would see. But the truth of the matter is that the vast majority who says this, that if they would see a miracle, that would make them change their lifestyle, they're not being very sincere. Because the rabbis tell us very briefly, how do you deal with such individuals who need miracles to believe? You basically tell them, whoever wants to know the truth, whoever seeks the truth, does not need miracles. And whoever does not want to know from the truth, the miracles won't help him. That is the basic answer we give to these people who claim that that would make a difference in their life. Again, it could be that to some people it will make some of a difference, as we will see. Miracles do have an impact. But if that alone would make a person change his life, usually not so. But that's not the reason why there are or there are no miracles. It has nothing to do with convincing one that Hashem exists. Miracles are not for the purpose of convincing. They do not necessarily help either. But whoever makes that claim, you should know that he's not sincerely searching for the truth. To be able to search the truth, you do not need miracles. Abraham Avinu searched for the truth, and he was able to discover it on his own, without even any outside help. And he did not have to see open, clear miracles. Miracles do tend to have an impact, but on the short term. Long term, as we will see, many people have experienced miracles in the past, many people have witnessed miracles, and little by little it dissipated. Just like many things dissipate in life, there is an excitement for a moment, and then the excitement goes away, it wanes. Same thing with any impression, that one may have received as a result of an incredible event, it eventually wanes, it eventually dissipates. It doesn't leave too much of an impression for too long. Rambam makes a point that Am Yisrael, the Jewish nation, did not commit themselves to Torah Mitzvot, did not believe in God because of the miracles that they witnessed, because of the Ototum Moftim that Moshe performed. He makes it a point to emphasize that. Don't think that that is what convinced them. Don't think that that is why they committed themselves to this kind of a lifestyle. What made it? What made it was the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, B'chvodo B'atzmo, He Himself revealed Himself in the only time in our history that He revealed Himself to an entire nation, and the only nation, and He spoke to us. That is when we said, Na'aseh v'nishma. Vayaminu b'Hashem u'b'Moshe avdo, when they left Egypt, was as a result of a promise being kept. Hashem promised, and He kept His promise. He took us out of Egypt, took us out of slavery. Nothing to do with Moftim. Even though it's true that there were 10 Makot, 10 plagues, there were incredible events in Egypt that further added perhaps more strength to the statements made, but that's not what it was. That's not what moved them. That's not what convinced them to take upon themselves this lifestyle forever and forever, for all generations to come. Only that He appeared to them, He spoke to them. And this appearance only happened once, and the next time that it will happen will be B'ezrat Hashem very soon when Mashiach comes. But in between Matan Torah and Har Sinai and Mashiach, no more appearances. And we'll try to figure that out. Why not? Why don't we have a show with fireworks, like back then, with trumpets, shofar, God speaking, this is God, Maybe every couple of years, maybe every 7 years, Shemitah. No, for some reason, that does not happen. Why not? Wouldn't that help? Now, what's wrong with convincing people through miracles, first of all? What's wrong with convincing people with miracles? So we said that miracles alone don't do it. But perhaps, if they're very, very big miracles, maybe then it will make a difference. Perhaps it has to do with the intensity, with the incredible fact that this is not something natural. Perhaps that would move people enough. Rambam says no. You know why? Maybe it's kishuf. Maybe it's witchcraft. If somebody performs something which is not so normal, something which is not natural, which does not abide by the laws of nature, it's very possible that it's witchcraft. There is something called witchcraft, and we'll speak about that. Why did Hashem create the ability for people to be involved in witchcraft? And what does witchcraft do? Rabbis tell us that they go against Pamalya Shelmala. They go against the heavenly rules. There are heavenly rules that Hashem dictates certain things based on certain laws. And here comes the witch, or here comes the one who does whatever, sorcerer, right? And goes against the laws of nature, goes against Hashem's will, and Hashem allows it. As the rabbis tell us, Makhishim Pamalya Shelmala, they're contradicting or going against the established rules. But Hashem allows that. So it is possible that when you see something unusual, and there have been people in the past that tried to convince people, mislead them, through witchcraft, claiming that they are who knows what. But in fact that they were a bunch of liars. And they were using witchcraft to convince people. Walking on water, all of these things can be done through kochot tum'ah, or obviously if you have the koach of the kedusha, which is the opposite koach. There is a koach of holiness, there is a koach that is part of the Kabbalah, using the names of Hashem, that one can do all sorts of things too. They go against established rules of nature. So, miracles by themselves could be not necessarily from the hand of Hashem. It could be something that is being done through witchcraft. What is a true miracle then? A true miracle that comes from Hashem is an act of breaking the laws of nature. That is what we said about witchcraft. But there's a big difference. What is that? Breaking the laws of nature. But that is exactly what we said about witchcraft. There's one big difference. In the beginning, when Kadosh Baruch Hu created the world, He established certain rules. Certain rules, that's what we studied in chemistry, or in biology, or in physics. The rules of nature, called Teva. But He also made a condition with these rules. That whenever necessary, these rules would be able to be broken. In other words, it's a condition in the system that we call nature that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can break His own rules. So it's His own rules that He's breaking. And this is a nes that happens according to Hashem's wishes whenever He chooses to go against the certain established rules. In other words, based on the laws of nature, this is what should have been, and it's impossible through any other remedy that human beings know of to make a change, except if the hand of Hashem is involved. What about witchcraft? Even witchcraft is not capable of doing everything. So witchcraft, even though it's capable of doing a lot, it is limited, because obviously it's not from Hashem. Hashem is not limited, and therefore anything is possible. Examples, read the Torah, and you will find all sorts of examples. The earth swallowing up Korah, the water splitting, right? The hail that came down in Egypt was a mixture of water and fire, two elements that don't get along. All sorts of things that go against, defy the laws of nature. If it's coming from Hashem, everything is possible. So a nes, where does nes originate from? It originates from the very beginning of creation, where Hashem allowed for rules to be broken. So it's not going against His plan. This is part of His plan. He made a condition in the very, very beginning that this should be possible. What does the word nes mean? The word nes means a mast on a ship. You have something that is very, very high. Nes means that it's high, up there, a mast. What does nes have to do with high? Something which is supernatural, which is al-tiv'i, which is not going by the laws of nature, is something above nature. You have 6 corners to the Magen David. 6 corners representing this world. When we shake the lulav, in a week from now, we will be shaking how many corners? 6. What 6? We have 4. Yeah, we have north, south, east, west, but we also have up and down. 6, you can call it 6 dimensions, 6 corners, whatever you want to call it. Number 7 is above nature. So you have 6 days a week of the physical work that we do, physical labor, because this is the physical world. But Shabbat is spiritual. Shabbat is menucha. Number 7 is the me'al hateva, is above nature. So 7 therefore is always holy in the Torah. Holy. What's holiness? Elevated. Higher than everything else. 6 represents this world. 7 represents the upper world. 7 represents the spiritual world. Me'al hateva. So nes is above nature. Something which does not belong in the physical realm. And nes is also something which is rare. Right? It's not common. A nes is also something not expected. A nes is also something that leaves a very, very strong impression. And a very important condition is that a nes is something which cannot be attributed to chance. Zelo mikri. Now, of all the things that I just mentioned, of all the descriptions of what a nes is, which one do you think people have the hardest time with? The last one. To say about something that happened that it's not coincidental, that it's not by chance. That it's unusual, scientists will agree with you. It's unusual. That it's unexpected, of course, it's unexpected. They were expecting the person that this guy will, something will happen to him. He will not make it. And all of a sudden they see from pictures after he received the blessing that the tumor disappeared. You can see it. Yesterday there was a tumor and now it's gone. They didn't do anything. No antibiotics, no medication. How did it disappear? So it's unusual, it's unexpected, it definitely makes an impression on them, right? But to say that this is a miracle, that's not in their lexicon of the doctors, not the ones who don't believe in miracles. So what are they going to call it? They're going to call it, no, it's by chance. Something happened. We have no explanation for it. It happens. Yeah, some might give an explanation. Oh, his immune system is strong. He has good genes. Some people will try to make up all sorts of stories, explanations. But those who are honest at least will say, no, we really don't have an explanation for it. But they don't want to agree that it's a miracle. Whereas throughout history, all nations, all peoples, all cultures and civilizations, whenever they saw something that left a big impression on them, they either were scared or they obviously took notice of it and they knew that this was something from heaven. Indians, of course, took everything as a sign from heaven. The Indians, I'm saying, in this country, whether there was rain coming down, no rain coming down, all sorts of things that were directed by nature, by the laws of nature, they took everything to be something from the gods. Even though we know that everything is min Hashem, we do know that nevertheless He runs this world through something called nature. And nature is not something by chance. Nature follows certain rules. But when those rules are broken, we have to understand where it's coming from. We have to understand it properly and be careful not to attribute anything to chance. Because even though there is something called mikre in Hebrew, we will talk about that when we talk about Hashgachat Hashem. Is there something called really mikre, that Hashem is totally uninvolved, it just happens by itself? We will see that it's not precisely so. There's a system in this world that controls everything. As the rabbis tell us, every blade of grass has a malach, has an energy, a source of energy that controls it, that allows it to grow. So nothing really happens really by itself. Even when you throw dice, and Hashem says, I'm not involved, don't think that the numbers that come out are pure chance. It's not exactly pure chance. But B'ezrat Hashem, we'll talk about it another time. So this particular ness that we describe as something unexpected, something that leaves an impression, something that is al-tivi, that is above nature, is one way of Hashem's involvement in this world. One way of Hashem showing His hashgacha, that even though we don't see Him at all times, from time to time, we do see it. What is that? Yes. Right. I'm sorry?
You said mikre, and then you said
right, I said that B'ezrat Hashem we'll speak about that after the holidays when we talk about Hashgachat Hashem, what mikre means. Mikre means by chance, by coincidence. Is there something really by coincidence? Or is there not? Or is there another explanation for it? When it comes to real miracles, there are also various levels. There are some that are larger, some that are smaller, some that are much more revealing than others. There are some that are performed to an individual. There are some that are performed to an entire tzibur, entire congregation, entire community. There are some that are through a shaliach, a messenger like an angel. There are some that are through Hashem directly Himself. There are some miracles that are beneficial, that help, and there are some that are very destructive. When you have a tsunami, that's a miracle. I mean, we don't like to call it a miracle because it's not a... We're used to the word miracle meaning something helpful, something that helps, saves, protects, changes something for the good. But we just described miracle, the real definition of miracle, meaning something above nature. Hashem's hashgacha, Hashem's involvement in this world. And Hashem's involvement in this world sometimes is to punish, is sometimes to bring about destruction, unfortunately. That's what an earthquake is. So even though you will hear in the radio and you will read in the papers that there is a fault, San Andreas fault, running across the state of California, who put the fault there? Who decides when it's going to wake up? So of course there is a fault. Nobody's denying that there is a fault. But what's getting this fault to do what it does? So you still will get geologists to explain this phenomenon geologically, how the plates rub against each other, and when they rub against each other, that produces an earthquake. Let's assume that they know what they're talking about, even though nobody's been down there below to check it out. But that's what they're assuming, based on certain criteria. Who causes them to move? There's still something that originates, that brings this about. Who is that? Who's behind that? So you have to, of course, believe in Hashem to know that He brings these things about. They don't happen by themselves. So even though we may have explanations for them that we can understand in human terms, we must not forget that there's somebody behind that. And that is Hashem. There's a lot of stories of miracles, all kinds of miracles. There's books and books of miracles and stories. And I'm sure many of you have read and know, or perhaps had in your own life, a miracle. I'm just going to share with you a quick story that happened a couple hundred years ago in Krakow. I don't recall all the details right now, but basically what was going on in this Jewish community was that there was a number of people that were not very modest. They got together in weddings and they danced together, men and women, I think. They didn't dress modestly, they didn't behave modestly. And the Rama, who was the chief rabbi of the community back then, had warned them that this is going to lead them to trouble. Hashem will not tolerate this for too long. And one day, in one of those events, the earth opened up and the entire group of people was swallowed up. Very similar to what happened in Israel not too long ago in a wedding hall. The earth did not open up there, but the floor caved in. Now, of course, everybody's going to blame the architect and the engineer and the materials that were used. And perhaps there's some truth to that. I'm not saying that. But the fact that it happened is still in the hands of Hashem, because people lose their lives. When people get hurt and lose their life, He's involved. And whenever things like this occur, we must remember that Hashem mashgiach al olam. Things don't happen by chance. If we don't have that belief, then obviously we're going to blame all sorts of things other than the real source. But those of us who are very much believing that there's a hashgacha, constant hashgacha, we know that we don't need to blame the material or the architect, even though they may be at fault too. They may be at fault. Nonetheless, there's always the hand of Hashem involved. So this kind of, that was not necessarily such an open miracle, because you can blame someone. But what happened in Krakow was obvious to everybody. Everybody took notice of that. That does not happen every day. The closest thing that happens to that, do you know what is the closest thing that happens to what happened in Krakow today? You hear it in the radio every so often. It's called a sinkhole. You know what a sinkhole is? All of a sudden, a car is going, and the earth opens up and swallows up his car. And you have a big crater there that's about 30 feet in diameter and about 30-40 feet deep. Where did that come from? Call the geologists, and they'll tell you probably that there was a sewer pipe there before, or there was a lot of water there, and somehow the cement could not stay in place, the asphalt, and the earth, of course, gave way, a sandy earth, and that's it. And that's true. You know, that these things happen naturally. But even then, Hashem is involved. If somebody got hurt, then why did it exactly at the moment that opened up, did a car drive by? Right? These are things that are close, but they're not the same. When you have a warning before by the rabbi of the community, when you have a certain conduct taking place, and it happens exactly there to a whole bunch of people, something that does not happen regularly, earth just opens up and swallows the people, then obviously it's a nes min hashamayim. In other words, it's an indication that midat hadin, the attribute of justice, won. In other words, no more tolerance, no more acceptance of this behavior, and they were, of course, punished. Yes?
What year was that?
That was in the late 1500s. Approximately. Yeah. It's a famous story that happened there. You can go even today to the spot of where it happened. It's across his shul, or the Rama's shul that is still standing. Not everybody who goes in knows about it. But if you read the story and you know exactly where it happened, you can actually go there, and I don't know what you will see, I was there and I didn't notice anything because the earth is covered. But that's where it happened. Anyway, we have many miracles in all aspects of our life. You have miracles where people did not have children, and all of a sudden they were able to have children. People who were very sick and recovered their health. People who were almost given for dead that came back alive. You have miracles in wars. In other words, we still have miracles. We're trying to understand why we don't have more miracles, why the miracles are stronger, but I'm giving you some examples of that there are still miracles, and that these miracles represent the Yad Hashem, the hand of Hashem, Hashem's involvement, His Hashgacha in this world. To some extent, we will always see these miracles in all areas of our life. But scientists will conclude that this is, the Israeli army did an incredible job in the 6-day war. And some soldiers may claim, or some pilots, that they're the best because of that, ignoring the fact that this was a miracle. So you will always have, you see how you can have a situation which is to us an obvious miracle, and to many non-Jews it was an obvious miracle too. But not to everyone, unfortunately. Okay, so now that we pretty much described what miracles are and in what form they take shape, and that of course Hashem still shows His Hashgacha in this world from time to time, we're back to the question as to why Hashem does not make more miracles. Why doesn't He use the miracles to convince people? And hopefully if everybody would see more miracles, maybe everybody would be more observant. That would be very, very nice if that were true. But obviously there's some things that Hashem does for good reason. And one of them is not to make too many miracles. And there are various explanations for it. So let's begin with explanation number one. Explanation number one, why it's not such a good idea to have too many miracles, or too many obvious miracles. For those of you who were here several months ago, we discussed the subject of free will. When Hashem created the world, He empowered the human being with a very, very special ability. And that is, He gave him free will. Free will means the ability to do good or to do evil. Free will means that in this world, if there is to be true free will, there can be evil. Evil is the product of man, not from above. Man causes wars. Man kills, right? Everything is by human beings. But this is a necessity. This is a necessity in order to have true free will, for things not to be obvious, for human beings not to be robots or puppets, for them to truly have free will so that they can on their own choose the right path and be rewarded for doing something on their own, right? Remember that? In order for them to be able to do that, you have to give them free will. And in order for them to have true free will, you can't make it too obvious. You can't make it too clear. Because then most likely people are going to say, oh, if I'm going to speed and the officer is for sure going to catch me and for sure going to give me a ticket for speeding, how many people do you think are going to speed? Does anybody here speed when he sees the highway patrol behind him? Not too many people. I did it once. But that's only because I was only going a little bit past the speed limit, not too much. But he still stopped me and he didn't give me a ticket. He said, next time don't go too much faster. But anyway, usually if we see him behind us, we don't dare do it. If people would see that it's so obvious that for everything that they do wrong, they get punished. Every time that they desecrate the Shabbat, they get punished. They lose their parnasah. Then they wouldn't do it. If that would happen, then obviously the free will would be compromised. Hashem wants it to be fair. Hashem wants people to have a real choice between doing what is right and what is wrong. That is part of the system that He needs in place in order for people to really earn the sachar, the reward for Olam Haba, their ticket for Olam Haba. They have to not be too influenced by anything. They really have to have an equal chance and not in any way influenced by any outside powers that will sway them in either direction. What would happen if Hashem would be very obvious to them, if it would be very clear to them? Rabbis explain that this would create a situation where man would be in a prison. He would be compelled to do the right thing or stay away from the wrong thing. And this kind of a life of a person feeling that he's being watched all the time, this kind of a prison life, is not what Hashem had in mind for human beings. But that is what would happen if he were to know, if man were to know that Hashem is watching over him, every little step of every little thing that he does, and there would be a consequence to everything he does. That would be a prison type of life.
So isn't there a lot of very religious people that live that way today?
That live like what?
Fear of Hashem, and they not do everything.
No.
And they're very restricted.
No. The very religious people don't have fear, they have awe. A-W-E.
Oh, they're scared.
Oh, no. Being scared is a very, very low level. Children are scared.
No, but they grow as children scared, and
No.
they grow into this box.
No.
Yeah.
No. You have the wrong impression. No. That's the no.
I can see it.
No. Adults, anybody who's an adult and is truly observant of the mitzvot of the Torah is usually not scared of Hashem. He has awe. A-W-E. There's a big difference.
But they know God is watching them all the time.
And that is why they have awe for Him. You know what awe means? Awe is a different level. Scared is somebody that is...
I know we are in the 10 days of awe right now.
Awe, but not scared. Children are scared. You have adults who are scared too, but that's a very, very low level of faith. I don't do it because I'm afraid He's going to throw me in Gehenom. Most people who are observant and religious are not on that low level of afraid. Baruch Hashem, they have worked themselves up and they realize that Hashem exists and He's watching over them and they have awe for Him. They're concerned about their neshama. They're not afraid of Him. A child is afraid. It's a very, very low level. I'm not saying there aren't people like that, but not everyone is like that. Not everyone is afraid. They're in a higher level than being afraid. They have awe, which is a lot more special too. Anyway, but that is exactly what would happen as a result of the godliness being present all around us, is that people would actually will feel very, very limited, and that would infringe on their free will. Kohelet says, you know what? Can you give me a chumash, a regular Menashe, over there, a red chumash, or. Kohelet says, "Ze l'umat ze asa Elokim." HaKadosh Baruch Hu made ze l'umat ze. This corresponding to this. What does that mean? He made darkness and He made light. And the light is only appreciated because there is darkness. Right? Had we not had the opposite, darkness, we would not appreciate the light. He made good and He made evil. The good is appreciated, or the good stands out because there is evil. Right? Ze l'umat ze. He made wisdom, and the wisdom stands out where there is ignorance. One stands out. Rabbis tell us that because we have these extremes or opposites, if Hashem would be very obvious to us, if everything would be so clear to us, then the ultimate good and the ultimate tachlit, the ultimate achievement that man is supposed to accomplish in this world would not be to its maximum. In other words, man would not maximize his potential. The ultimate good, the ultimate tachlit that has to come out would not be brought about if one were to know that I'm being tested, I'm being watched over, I'm being supervised. Just ask any employee who has a boss looking over every little thing that he does. Does he work the same? Obviously maybe he's afraid, maybe he's more careful. Obviously, but not because he's not being as challenged, because he's not being exposed to all the possible situations. The ultimate maximum potential that this human being has of bringing out the tov, the ultimate tachlit, will not come out. In other words, we spoke about the two opposites, right? Then obviously people see sometimes the good versus the evil, just like they see the light versus the darkness. In other words, we can see the two sides of the coin. But there are other levels. In the level of good, in the level of accomplishment, one can do a lot more depending on the circumstances that he's in. If one is challenged, in other words, if he does not have somebody looking over him and he's put into certain situations, what does the rabbis tell us in Pirkei Avot? Lefum tsa'ara agra. According to one's effort and investment, that is how much he will be rewarded. So in other words, for the ultimate tachlit, for the ultimate good to come out, it's not just enough to put it next to the darkness, next to the evil. You want to put it into a situation where he can maximize himself to the greatest. A lot of people are not ambitious. If they would, maybe they would achieve more. If you put them in certain situations, perhaps a lot more of their capabilities would come out. When we spoke about it in astrology, I may have mentioned that a little bit, that some people have what's called in astrology, difficult aspects in their chart, in their mazal. In simpler language, what these difficult aspects mean are obstacles and hardships. Okay, let's call them that. And somebody might look at it and say, oh, misken, what a poor fellow. He has to deal with this and he has to deal with that. But do you know that because he has these things, this will make of him an incredible man because he had to deal with it? Does that bring to memory anybody? Who was the one that was deaf and played piano? Was it Bach or Beethoven? Beethoven? Yeah. Bach was completely normal? Yeah? Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, Beethoven was the one. Had he been completely healthy, you think he would have been better? Maybe not. Maybe because of his situation, he became what he became. You never know. People ask me, Rabbi, well, because this sign is a better, should I tell my doctor to do the C-section at this hour and this day and this month? You know, so that the boy or girl should be a Taurus instead of a Gemini, right? May 19, May 20 instead of May 21. Maybe it'll make a difference, right? You know, if you're on the border, it might make a difference. Don't be choosy because you don't know which one is better. What abilities the boy or the girl would have had they been born in a more challenging situation. Yes, it could be that you may be able to figure out that certain situations are more positive, but because of the obstacles and difficulties, this child will be able to grow and make of himself a great person. Who knows? So we don't get involved in Hashem's planning. We leave the planning to Him. Of when the baby comes out, he should be healthy. That's the main thing. So anyway, so for good reason, Hashem does not want to make it too obvious. And that is one reason we gave so far, is that it would limit our free will, it would interfere with our decisions, and we will not be able to maximize our full potential in getting what we need to get in this world. Do you know what happened in Matan Torah after Hashem did reveal Himself? And that one time that He did reveal Himself, they went into shock. The Midrash says the neshama left them. In other words, don't think that it's such an easy situation for somebody to observe Hashem, for somebody to, in other words, see a miracle firsthand in a very open and clear way. It would shock people. And you would say, okay, that's fine. I'll get over it later. Okay, let's say you do get over it. You know what happens now after you saw a miracle? If an individual who saw a miracle continues to commit a sin, transgressing the Torah, his avon, his sin is even more serious than it was before he saw the miracle. So does it pay for him to see the miracle? Now that things have become obvious to you, now that things are so clear, now we're expecting of you more. So that's another reason why Hashem says, you know what? I don't want you to go into shock. I don't want to shock you. By the way, you want to know how people would get easily shocked? Most of you have had dreams. Perhaps some of you have seen somebody who has departed in a dream. Some of you may be wondering why I haven't seen my uncle, my dad, my grandfather, my grandmother. Some of you would like to see somebody in a dream. A deceased person does not always come in a dream directly to an individual, even though he has a message for him. He may go to the brother, to the sister, to the uncle, go tell him. Why? Because the individual himself may be scared to see him. I may get up in the middle of the night, scared from seeing. They may not be able to handle. There was a story like that several years ago in Lakewood. Unfortunately, somebody got killed in a car accident, and came in a dream to his daughter-in-law. And the daughter-in-law, I think it was the daughter-in-law, asked him, why don't you go tell this message to your son directly? Or it was the other way around. He came to his son-in-law, why don't you go tell your daughter this directly? Because she would be scared. She would not be able, or he would not be able to handle it. So therefore, he's going the other way. So sometimes these experiences will be too shocking and too much to take, and Hashem does not, of course, want to bring this about. And that is another reason why we don't see malachim, we don't see angels or demons around us, there, even though there's a lot of demons around us. Just go to Melrose, you can see how many there are there. Yeah, I know. The real ones would be very scary to see. That's what the Gemara says. There are more of them than there are of us, one rabbi said. There are more of them than there are of us. And if we would see them, we would not be able to live normally. Imagine if you can see with your eyes bacteria. Thank God that you need microscopes to be able to, otherwise if you'd see all the bacteria around you, you'd pick up a tissue. Oh, I can see the bacteria on it, Baruch Hashem that we don't see everything. Baruch Hashem that we don't know everything. Another reason why Hashem does not make miracles is because even though there are times that He produces the miracles, not everybody gets the intended chizuk. A miracle can impact, can strengthen, but sometimes it only lasts a very short term. We have a lot of proof, unfortunately, during the Second Temple era, they saw many miracles. And they still committed many transgressions. That in itself is proof that miracles alone does not always bring about observance of mitzvot. What if you were to make it more often? Okay, maybe once in a while it doesn't have the desired result, but what if the miracles would be more often? Then what would happen? They'd get used to them. Right? And then if they get used to it, they would say, oh, it's just part of nature. Nothing special. Nonetheless, even though miracles don't produce and don't bring about the desired results, Hashem still shows them. And one of the most recent, perhaps, I think, great miracles that was obvious even to some non-religious Jews was the Scuds. 39 Scuds, missile attack on Israel. And apartments, 10,000 I think apartments were damaged. And nobody, except for one individual, was directly killed by a Scud. Mr. Rabin got up on the radio and he said, I'm not a religious Jew, but I just witnessed miracles. You know what he was referring to? He wasn't referring necessarily to all the missile attacks. He was referring especially in particular to one that he himself was very, very familiar with. 3 weeks before the first missile fell, there was a leak in one of the main gas lines not too far from Tel Aviv. So they didn't have enough time to repair it, so they shut it down. Saddam Hussein had already warned that he was going to burn half the country by sending missiles where? Probably he was going to aim them to where the gas runs. Had that pipe been working normally and hit by the missile, it would have caused tremendous amount of damage. So 3 weeks before, for some reason that they didn't understand, there was a leak and they decided to shut it down. He was referring, I think, mainly to that. That was indeed a miracle. He was able to put 2 and 2 together and say, oh, this is not coincidental. This is a smart man. This is an open, at least. And he said, I'm not religious, so why don't you think about it a little bit more? Okay, what are you going to do now? So obviously, it did not have a lasting impression on him, but at least he admitted it, that this is a miracle. He called it a miracle. When somebody calls it a miracle, they really, they mean it. In other words, they understand that this is not something normal. So from time to time, we do see miracles. But does everybody absorb it? Is everybody impressed? No, not necessarily. Zoche misha zoche. In other words, whoever's neshama is steered by that, it may make a lasting impression on him. Another reason why Hashem does not reveal himself too often is with the following story that is told. I think the Magid of Dubna brings the story down. There was once a child, a young boy, who played piano beautifully. And he got a certificate that he's an accomplished pianist. He demonstrated it. He had to play in front of a lot of people to get this certificate. He did very well, got a certificate, graduated, and went on with his studies. One day, a visitor came to visit his father, and the visitor tells the father, "I heard that your boy is a pianist, that he excelled very, very much, he knows how to play very well." "I don't believe it. I'd like to see it for myself, with my own eyes." So the father says, "What do you have to see it? Don't you see the certificate? Isn't this enough for you?" So the man tells, "No, I want to ask the boy." He says, "Go ahead, ask the boy." And the boy also refused to play the piano again. And he told his father, "Every time you're going to have a visitor that's going to ask me to play for them, to convince them, I'm going to have to play and convince them. The certificate on the wall should be enough for them, that I've demonstrated my skills, my talents, that I'm capable, and I don't have to prove myself over and over again to everyone who's curious." The same way with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He proved himself once. We have a certificate, the Torah, that he came down and spoke to us. You think he has to do it every single time? By the way, I like to use this example of Matan Torah against the missionaries. Missionaries, have all sorts of ways, methods to try to convince you that Yeshu, is the Messiah, and that there is a new covenant, a new testament, whatever they want to call it. And you should look into it and read about it. In the olden days, they used force. Today, they try to use, Words, smooth talking. You know what's the quickest answer to them, instead of getting involved too much with the details? Because you really have to be familiar with the text to be able to counter their arguments. And if you're not familiar, then you don't want to argue with them, because you may lose the argument. One of the best and quickest way to stop them on their tracks is, "Really? There's a New Testament? That I'm expecting Matan Torah in Har Sinai again. He came down the first time, and if he changed his mind, I would expect that he would come out in public and say so." You mean to say one guy came out and said so, and we should believe this one guy? Whereas the first time, he himself came out in public, and that is what got us to follow him. That is what gave us the strength to be able to die for him, to do the mitzvot in every situation. You want me to leave all of that for this one guy who claims that that God changed his mind? If he changed his mind, he has to do it the same way he did it the first time. As soon as I said that, the guy just kept his mouth shut. He had nothing. What is he going to say? It's logical. It makes sense. Why should he not come? Why does he have to be in the middle of the night, having this entire important message being given over to one man? Where are all the witnesses? But there's a lot of dumb people, forgive me for using that expression, but that is what they have. There's a lot of people who are ignorant, who will buy it. Unfortunately, they're ignorant of their tradition, they're not knowledgeable, and they don't know how to deal with it. But think a little bit logically, wouldn't that make sense? Hashem proved himself once, he doesn't have to prove himself again. And Hashem will never change the Torah either, because he wrote so in the Torah. The Torah is sealed. The Torah already knew, it anticipated that there will be false prophets, and that there will be threats to the Jewish people and to the Torah, coming from non-Jews, coming from Jews too. The Torah says, don't believe them. They're false prophets. The Torah will not change. Another reason why Hashem does not reveal himself too clearly is because it is obvious. There's already a lot of details in nature where you can see Hashem, you can see his handiwork, but people do not pay attention to this. In other words, if one really wants to see miracles, there's miracles all over the place. Another idea is that miracles do happen. And you know with who? There are individuals who can perform miracles. Even though we said before the miracles come down from above, there are individuals, tzaddikim, who are capable of performing miracles. What gives them the power to perform a miracle? Because what did we say in the very beginning? A miracle is a davar me'al hateva. It is something above nature, right? Something above the laws of nature. When a human being conducts himself above the laws of nature, when he himself does not just satisfy his own physical bodily needs, but actually makes that secondary, and he elevates himself, he sanctifies himself to be closer to Hashem, then he is elevating himself above nature. Because he's above nature, Hashem gives him the power to perform miracles that are above nature. And that is why a tzaddik has the power to perform miracles. Obviously the miracles are not coming from him directly. He's asking Hashem to perform the miracles. But he has that power. Why? Because he conducts himself above nature. Then he is blessed that his words, his blessings can bring about miraculous events. We explained so far that Hashem hides his face in a sense. He does not hide himself completely because that would be terrible. That is what we read recently in the Torah, and that's called Hester Panim. Hester Panim means that he will not be seen or observed, he will not be observed as much as he was in the past, and it would appear to be that he has abandoned the Jewish nation. Chas v'shalom. That is what we had in the Holocaust, that is what we had in the destruction of the first and second temple. That is what we have from time to time, what appears to be that he hides his face, but he's not hiding his face. It just makes it appear to be that he's not around. But the Ashgacha is still there. He's still watching over us. Why does he hide his face? Because he wants us to look for him. Even though things are not so obvious sometimes, even though things appear to be that he's not around, that he has left the scene, he has not left the scene. He simply wants us to look for him. That is what teshuvah means. Teshuvah in a sense means to go searching for him, to go back to him, to want to be with him. And sometimes that teshuvah has to be brought about by Hester Panim, by him hiding himself. But we have to remember that even though it is not obvious, it's not clear, if you look for him, you will find him. And there are many, many events in one's own personal life. You don't have to look for other people's lives. You don't have to read books. If you really search in your own life, you will see how he has protected you, he has cared for you, how he watched over you, how you were involved in an accident and you were miraculously saved. You can see the Ashgacha if you look for it. You don't have to wait for a big miracle to happen to be convinced that he's there. In the same way that Hashem does not reveal himself too clearly, neither does he reveal his plans or his ideas too clearly. We just read Hanistarot Lashem Elokeinu, that all the hidden things are beyond us. Human beings are not capable to fully grasp and fathom the ways of Hashem. Kilo machshavotay machshavotechem. The Prophet says, my thoughts, Hashem says, the thoughts of Hashem are not like the thoughts of a human being. You will never be able to figure out what I'm thinking and why I do certain things. Hashem's ways are hidden. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to figure this out. And he says, can you please let me know why you do certain things? I'd like to have an understanding. And Hashem tells him, listen, you can only see my back, you cannot see my front. What does that mean? Hashem is not physical. He has no back or front. What it means is that we never fully understand a situation when it happens to us, when we're facing it. We will only understand it years down the road when we look behind, when we look back. Oh, now it all makes sense. Now it all adds up. After it has happened, after this galut will finish, we will then understand, oh, now everything makes more sense. As things are happening, we don't fully understand. We don't see the front when we're facing it, but we can sometimes see the back after it has happened. Then things make a lot more sense. One way to get to know Hashem, one way to know Hashem, is by getting closer to Him. In other words, even though we said certain things are beyond us, certain things are hidden from us, it is still possible to get to know Hashem. And that is by being davik. Being davik means being attached to Hashem. Attached to Hashem means by following in His ways, being like Him, being compassionate like Him. He's forgiving of us, then you be forgiving. When one emulates the ways of Hashem, then one is able to get closer to Hashem. And then one is able to understand Hashem a little bit better. In other words, to get to know Him a little bit better. That is the only way we can come to understand Him, is by us emulating Him, being like Him, and attaching ourselves to Him. Just to close, we spoke tonight about the fact that Hashem does not want to make the miracles too open, too obvious, too clear. Nevertheless, the miracles are out there. Does anybody know what the greatest miracle of all is?
Jewish people still make it around.
That's a big miracle, but you don't have to look so far. The human being himself. Yov says, "Mi besari hazeh loka." I can see from my own flesh all the miracles. You leave the bathroom, we make a beautiful blessing. What a beautiful blessing. By the way, this blessing has a segula that whoever says it with kavanah will always be healthy. If you don't want to get Chas V'Shalom sick, then say that beracha when you leave the bathroom with a lot of kavanah. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu has created us that there are so many holes that if the holes that need to be opened would close up, the holes that need to be closed would open up. Chas V'Shalom, if things were not the way they were, things would stop functioning. We would not be able to live too long, right? How many minutes can we go without breathing? How many days can we go without food? How many, things are not working properly. So the human being is a miracle, is the greatest miracle of all. If you were to pay attention to himself and see, I should not take anything for granted. And I'd like to advise all those who are still looking for miracles. Without Hashem, we should all be zocheh to see miracles, to see the greatest miracle of all. And that is when Hashem, of course, reveals Himself. But I want to assure you one thing. What did we say in the very beginning? Miracles will not do it. Miracles will not convince people. You bring them tons of miracles, they might push them a little bit, but they're short-term effect. You know what will strengthen a person's emunah, what will bring you closer to Hashem? Yom Kippur. Right? We're getting very close to Yom Kippur. We just had Rosh Hashanah. If one takes these days seriously and thinks about his tachlit, thinks about his purpose in life, thinks about what he has done and how Hashem gives him a chance to start a new chapter in his life, this has a better chance of awakening him than a miracle. Because a miracle could be just a product of chance, according to some. We know it's not. A miracle could be a kishuv chas v'shalom. It could be a witchcraft. There are many explanations that we can give for miracles. Miracles, therefore, will not do it on their own. Miracles can be mechazek, can strengthen those who are already observant. Baruch Hashem, another miracle, another proof that Hashem is mashgiach, another proof that Hashem protects us. It is very, very true that Hashem does not sleep. Hashem is always aware. We have no idea of how many plots the Goyim are plotting against us. Only He knows, and He's aware of them, and He has, of course, frustrated the plans and their designs behind our backs. In other words, we're not even aware of everything that is happening to us. And that is what we say in the Tefillah. Morning and evening, every single day, we thank you, Hashem, for all the miracles that we are not aware of. There are many things that we are not aware of. And therefore, we have to give thanks to Hashem that they occur, that He protects us, that He's around, that Hashgacha is continuous with us, especially with Am Yisrael. I want to wish you that this Kippur should be a K'tivah v'chatima tova for all of you, for your families, for all of Am Yisrael, that this coming year is a very special year, it's a leap year, it's a Shnat Shemitah. Shemitah means that the land is not worked, is not toiled. That means everybody can take from the fruit that grew on it. It's efker. It's a very, very significant year. And according to our rabbis, our tradition, the Mashiach comes in the end of the year of the Shemitah. So this is a very propitious time for Geulah too. So hopefully, if Am Yisrael does a good amount of teshuvah, then all of us will have a Chavetimah Dovah. And this Chatimah, of course, will earn us, B'ezrat Hashem, the Geulah. Amen.